U.S. Senator Joseph Biden, one of the leaders of the Democratic Party, spoke at Ball State University this week about a new vision for America. He also discusses with us today the most contemporary issues in Washington. Leading experts in gifted education talk with us about the importance of a state residential school for the gifted and talented at Ball State. Also, on today's program, Tony Costello from the College of Architecture and David Shane, Indianapolis, from the Pan American Games Committee, discuss a challenging opportunity for Ball State students and faculty to prepare designs for next summer's games. U.S. Senator Joseph Biden, frequently mentioned as a dark horse presidential candidate, was at Ball State University this week as the first of two noted American political speakers invited to Ball State. The second will be former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, who speaks next April 15th.
Senator, the House and the Senate announced special investigative committees to look into the Iran arms deal affair. What's your opinion on the special committees, and do you see that interfering with any investigation of the Judiciary Committee?
I believe there should be a single committee of the United States Senate and one in the House. I think it's going to be too difficult to have a joint committee, which would be preferable, but I think there would be more difficulty in setting that up than it would be worth. But I think that the 6 committees in the Senate that have jurisdiction should be melded into one, and we should begin the investigation as rapidly as possible. I, for one, do not object to it being formed under the Republican leadership now, if they wish to do it. But I think practically speaking, that's not likely to happen because of time. And I'm not quite certain that the Republican leadership is all that crazy about wanting to do that either. So I think there should be one committee.
The Democrats, or the leaders announced today, I believe, that it will be a Democratic majority on both of those committees. And I was wondering what your chances are of serving on the Senate committee.
I hope not good. I shouldn't be so facetious. I have not sought and I am not seeking membership on that committee. I have been told secondhand I've been recommended to be on the committee, but I'm going to have enough difficulty, as most chairpersons are in the upcoming Congress, dealing with the business of our committee. And I think, generally speaking, it would be better to have people who did not have full responsibility, committee responsibilities now, to make up the membership of that committee. There's plenty of qualified people. I would also like to add that I hope the President makes the need for the committee somewhat moot, and I think he could do that. I think the President would be very well served if he would go to the American people and the Congress and just straightforwardly and simply state what has happened, to the extent that he knows it, to say what the rationale was for this proposal to sell arms, what the genesis of it was, who was involved in it, how it happened, and I believe he could avert what could develop into a crisis. I think he could allow us to get to the business of attending to very serious problems that we're going to have to address immediately upon returning to the Senate. For example, there were rumors as recently as 10 days ago that the administration would not be prepared to send forward their budget at the usual time of the State of the Union. It would not come until after the so-called President's holiday, which is the first week in February. Obviously, there's a great deal to be done on the economy. There's a great deal to be done on foreign policy. And I think the President should very bluntly take Chairman Lugar's advice and immediately fire Mr. Casey and Mr. Regan and get on with the business of conducting the government.
Why fire Casey and Regan?
There is no way Casey could not be involved in this. I admit a prejudice. I'm the only one that voted against Casey to begin with years ago. I think he should not be the Director of Central Intelligence. He does not have the confidence of the Congress in either political party. And I think it's important for the President to demonstrate that there is nothing being hidden and that he is prepared to start anew and pick the new year to do that. I think that if Mr. Casey and Mr. Reagan wish to serve him, and I'm not being facetious, the best way they could serve him would be to tender their resignations.
Do you believe then that Donald Reagan knew what was happening fully?
I don't think it is particularly relevant whether he knew or he didn't. If he didn't know and it was a White House operation, then he's not very competent. If he did know and he didn't inform the president, then he does not serve the president well. And if he did know and he did tell the president, then we're all in trouble.
Vice President Bush has admitted that some mistakes were made. And some senators, Republican and Democrats, have said that if President Reagan admitted that mistakes were made, it would deflate the issue.
I think the American people want desperately to believe the president. I want to. We cannot tolerate another failed presidency. As much as I've disagreed with this president, and I'm not being disingenuous here, as much as I've disagreed with him, and there's probably been fewer people who have been more harsh critics of his foreign policy than I do not want to see him fail. Because if it does, it will make it incredibly difficult for the next president, Democrat or Republican, to conduct the affairs, particularly the foreign affairs of this country. And so I believe that if the president, with the reservoir of goodwill that he possesses in this country, came forward and simply said, in, if you will, the John Kennedy mold, and said, I not only take full responsibility, which he's already said, but that I was wrong, I made a mistake. I am cleaning house and I'm beginning anew. I think the American people would put this to bed immediately. It would be gone. I hope he will. To tell you the truth, I've already lost my bet. I went on record in my home state saying that the next time the president went on the air, he would do that. He fooled me. He did not do that. I don't know where he's getting his advice. I don't know why he's doing what he's doing. For example, he said he has told his national security advisor and the assistant, Colonel North, to come forward and testify before the committee as if that was some great offering that was made. And then they came forward and took the Fifth Amendment. I just think this thing is, it can become very messy, and it need not become some Byzantine plot. The president can say to us, I started this on such and such a date. My rationale was such and such. This is what went awry. This is why I think I did, this is what I think I did correctly, this is what I think I did incorrectly, and here's what I'm going to do from here. And I cannot believe that his standing and the affection of the American people would not surround him and be able to allow him to have a productive 2 years, last 2 years of his presidency.
Wouldn't the Congress still want some blood from Poindexter or North?
The Congress would still want to know what the facts were on the record from the people who in fact participated. But I think that the nature of the investigation would be very different. If you notice, ladies and gentlemen, I haven't seen as many Republicans, and I've been a senator since 1972. I was there during Watergate in the United States Senate. I have not seen as many Republicans running for cover as I have seen since then. And the reason that's happening is that because there's not much information forthcoming, they're all in the position of saying, my God, I don't want to be out there saying, I know what he's saying is correct, and then find out that I have been duped too. And the president, if he would come forward and state the details, would gain himself some real allies in both political parties who would wish to help, which would change considerably the nature of and composition of the hearings that will take place, in my view.
But your statements imply that the president does know.
My statement, if that's what it implies, it's not meant to imply that. I do not believe, I take the president at his word that he did not know. I accept him at his word. I think what the president seems to be doing is trying to get out of this without any damage, and consequently causing himself more damage. It is clear that the president was not fully in control of American foreign policy. And I think the president should acknowledge that. Because the alternative to not acknowledging that is that he was in control and he did know. There is one of those two things. There is not an alternative. And that's what has most of us perplexed, that there is an unwillingness to say, we're not looking for a mea culpa to say, well, we got him to say he made a mistake. We're looking to confirm that he didn't know. That's what we want to know.
Dr. Charles Elber, director of the North Carolina School of Science and Mathematics in Durham, North Carolina, discusses the important role that his school plays in North Carolina education. Ball State University is asking the Indiana General Assembly to fund a similar type program through the Indiana Academy of Sciences and Mathematics and Humanities. It will be for talented high school juniors and seniors enrolled in advanced courses at Burris School. Dr. Elber, your program for gifted and talented youth in North Carolina is one that we here in Indiana and educators elsewhere throughout the United States look upon as a model program. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us how long your school has been open and how students are selected?
Sure. We opened in 1980, so we're in our seventh year of operation. Students are selected with a very comprehensive selection process, which includes probably 8 or 9 major items that are looked at, including test scores. All the students take the SAT during the 10th grade when they apply to become rising juniors or 11th graders. But we also look at teacher recommendations, essays, grades, statements the students make about themselves, what they can contribute to the school. We ask teachers for letters of recommendation. We try to rate them on checklists of various qualities that are normally attributed to academically talented young people. Of 800 students who apply typically each year, we interview 400, and that interview process becomes part of the selection process. And all of these things fit together, and we do select them very generally on geographic regions to make sure that we get a distribution throughout the state of North Carolina. But we don't bring in unqualified students just for the sake of having some particular region of the state represented.
What is your enrollment? What level do you achieve?
We're at 475 students, and it's just 11th and 12th grade.
And how many faculty for those students?
Faculty, about 45 faculty.
45, 10, ratio of 10 to
about
1?
11 to 1. Mm-hmm.
11 to 1.
And now the classes run about 20 in size, but the difference in the mathematical ratio is that the students take so many more courses, we have to have more faculty for them.
What are the ages of the students?
Typically they come in at, they've just turned 16, although we have had students as young as 14, but they're typically rising juniors, 15, 16 years old, and of course they become 18 and graduate from us.
How do you select faculty to teach challenging young people?
Well, we look for, first of all, a great knowledge of subject matter. About half our faculty have their doctorates in the subject matter. We also look, obviously, for their ability to communicate, to be teachers, although we're not required to hire certified teachers. So some people have come from the university, from industry, but we do ascertain that they are teachers and able to teach, and we do provide some in-service training for them if they haven't had as much experience. But the important thing is they've got to know their subject to be able to stay up with these bright students.
So in this framework, an Einstein could teach at your school?
Indeed he could.
Good.
And if he didn't turn his attendance records in time, we'd help him to realize that it's kind of important to know where these kids are.
What is the relationship between your North Carolina School of Science and Mathematics and the public schools of North Carolina?
There's no direct formal relationship, and I have to say we have, frankly, planned not to be under the State Board of Education or under the Department of Public Instruction. We felt the school laws would be too restrictive on us, textbooks, curriculum, and so forth. However, having said that, we really do cooperate in many, many ways with the public schools. Much of our commitment is not just to take what we do with students on campus, but to learn from them, curriculum, teaching methods, and then we share that throughout the state with teacher training workshops, and many of these are in cooperation with our Department of Public Instruction.
Are you funded by the state of North Carolina?
Yes, about 90% of our operating funds comes from a direct line item appropriation to the school from our General Assembly.
So they realize the importance of giving you latitude in operation?
Yes. In fact, the laws have been written establishing the school, which give our Board of Trustees the latitude to make those kind of policies.
Are these guidelines that are used in the development of other schools for gifted and talented children around the country?
I think they have been. You'll be able to ask Dr. Marshall and Dr. Brown that about the other two schools, but they came and visited us before each school was established.
Were you one of the first in the country?
We're the first school that is publicly supported residential school.
Are you offering any special programs that are helpful, such as curriculum development, fellowships for public school teachers to work in your schools?
Yes to all of those. I mentioned summer workshops. We also have a program where teachers come in and spend a year from the public schools. They teach half-time, so they're pretty good teachers to begin with. The other half of the time they don't teach, they work on curriculum development and software and laboratory manuals, and after a year then they go back to their home high schools, taking this experience and these materials with them.
Television, very important in Indiana. IHET's program, the Indiana Higher Education Television System. Do you share some of your instruction via television to the public schools?
We've not done much of that up to this point. We did have one program in physics where by way of a two-way computer hookup and audio hookup with telephone lines, our physics instructor worked with the three remote high schools in different parts of the state. Some of that was personal visits by our instructor, and then he filled in with computer networking and audio networking.
You've been operating the North Carolina school long enough to have been able to collect data on how well your students, your graduates have done. Would you share some of that data with us?
Indeed, I would. Virtually 100% of our students go on to universities or colleges. About 2/3 stay in North Carolina, which is, I think, a tribute to some of the fine institutions of higher education we have in the state. The other 1/3 are scattered throughout some of the most selective and prestigious institutions in the country, including the Ivy Leagues, the technical universities, the military academies. The class, last year's graduating class of about 190 students was offered $2.5 million worth of scholarship aid. Obviously they couldn't accept that because some were offered more than one scholarship. We have a very high number of National Merit Scholars, and this is a tribute to the schools in North Carolina who send these students to us, and then we move them on in their development of the potential. So these kinds of things. We had our first Rhodes Scholar. We share that with Wake Forest, but a member of our class of '82 was a class of '86 at Wake Forest University and was named a Rhodes Scholar. So these are not specific quantifiable things, but they're strong indicators that the school has been successful.
How does the legislature view your school and its operation over these years?
With increasing pride and support. It was very much touch and go when the school was formed. Governor Hunt had to use his considerable political persuasion to have the legislation passed to establish the school and have our appropriation passed. But increasingly, through the service we provide to all the schools through our outreach program, we have shown that we're serving more than just the few students that come to our campus. But there's been an impact, the ripple effect, throughout the entire state in many, many ways. And this has changed the approach so that the legislature, of course, they still ask questions about costs and distribution of students, but we have no pressure except to do a good job and to bring in students based on our qualifications and to continue to serve the whole state.
And your relationship to the public schools in general, any competitiveness or jealousies?
Far less than there was in the early years, because I think they are seeing the long-range benefits of their teachers coming back. And while they may miss a few of the students that we take, who apply to us, but I think they've pretty much accepted the concept that I use in describing the student body, in saying that we don't have all of the top students in the state. We have a sample of the top students in the state. Some don't even choose to apply. They've got things back home that are more important to them than coming away and living hundreds of miles away in a residential school. So in that respect, the public schools, by and large, are proud when students are selected for the school and appreciative of the kinds of things we send back to them.
The Ball State University College of Architecture has been selected by the Public Space Design Committee of the Pan American Games to design graphics for the Games in Indianapolis next August. Tony Costello, Ball State Professor of Architecture and Project Chairman, talked with us about this ambitious program.
the more we talked about it with both Sid Weedman and Dave Shane, the more it became apparent that they had done very little work on the design aspects of all the venues and all the ceremonial spaces. And one thing led to another, where now we have approximately 225 students and 20 faculty members who are committing the weeks between coming back to school and the 19th to this project.
What exactly will you be designing?
Well, a little bit of everything. We're going to look, of course, at the major spaces of Indianapolis, and by that I mean Monument Circle, the American Legion Mall, which will be the site of the closing ceremonies. Although we do not have this assigned yet or taken by a faculty member, the opening ceremonies will be held at the 500 racetrack. And to turn that into a festival area is going to be quite difficult. We're taking all the sport venues with the exception of Camp Atterbury, and we are basically going to deal with things like graphics, banners, signage, ticket booths, concession stands, the officials' podium, the awards platforms, those things that you do to a site to make it into a Pan Am site.
And make it attractive and interesting.
And make it attractive and interesting, and also pull all the sites together so that there's some sort of overall design theme. And it's a really exciting challenge. It's for me as an urban designer, it's very exciting because we are dealing at a scale of design that we very, very seldom get to really approach. And the exciting thing for our students, of course, is that many of their ideas will actually be built and will be seen by the world next August. I think that's the most exciting part.
And of course, we're talking about quite an area from the northern border, Michigan City,
Right.
down to Camp Atterbury.
Right. We have Professor Dan Woodfin and his second-year studio will be looking at the yachting venue up on Lake Michigan. We have the velodrome and the natatorium, the tennis stadium, and the IU-PUI track facility, which will be looked at by our freshman class, some 78 students. We are going to have Professor Andy Seeger looking at the rowing venue out at Eagle Creek. So, yeah, it's very exciting. And then we have, for instance, Professor of Landscape Architecture Noel Dorsey and planning professor Jim Segedy looking at the major thoroughfares as people exit the inner loop and come down into the downtown, looking at the location for directional graphics. It's very important. There are going to be a lot of people in Indy that have never been there before. How do you get to sites? Trying to, in a sense, deal with the banners, windsocks, all the things that are going to make Indianapolis into a very festive celebration space.
And the Ball State College of Architecture will be involved in the Olympic Village.
We are going to, and Professor Stan Mendelson has taken on for me the greatest challenge, and that's taking Fort Ben Harrison and making it into a Pan Am village. And as with most military installations, it has never put a very high priority on planning and design standards, but he, along with Professor Eggink and a second-year studio, will be attempting to deal with the planning, and that's a real challenge. And Professor Jack Wyman is going to be taking the Lawrence Central High School, which is being used as a security and marshaling area. And all athletes and press and VIPs will stop there first and then transfer onto other buses to go to the Olympic Village. So here's basically an Indiana high school, and you're asking it to become a reception area for 5,000 athletes. And so he and a fourth-year studio are taking on that site. So it's really exciting. It's going to give our students the opportunity to deal with real-world issues. As usual, the budget is very limited. Most of the work will be, in fact, executed by volunteers, and Indianapolis is marshaling an incredible volunteer effort for this. And I'm just pleased that Ball State University, which, as you know, is Indiana's only state-supported College of Architecture and Planning, is making, I think, a very vital and a very large contribution to this international effort.
A very ambitious project in a very short period of time.
We are committing most of our school, as I said, for the next 2.5 weeks. There are people like Professor Mendelson, who it was very quick to realize that you're not going to do Fort Ben Harrison in 2.5 weeks. He and Professor Roca and possibly some other professors will carry on for the entire quarter. It is exciting. It's a major challenge. I think we have the forces in place. We have the logistics worked out, and I think there's going to be an incredible amount of excitement and energy here at the College of Architecture and Planning between now and the 19th of December.
Amigo, the Pan Am Games mascot, was on campus meeting students with Dave Shane and Sid Weedman. Shane explains how the Ball State students and the College of Architecture was selected to prepare designs for the games. Mr. Shane, how was Ball State College of Architecture selected for this project?
We studied Los Angeles, what they did at the Olympics, and we realized how important the image created by the design elements of the games, architecturally and other design elements are. We knew that in our own backyard, and here in Indiana, we had the College of Architecture and Planning at Ball State, and we saw no reason to go further than that. We asked Tony Costello to assist, and with his help and that of the whole faculty, they agreed to devote their winter term.
Will they have pretty much free reign, or will there be some input from your executive committee?
There are certain parameters that are necessary. We have very little budget, and we need to work with common materials, and that's a challenge for them. But beyond that, we have no design restrictions of any kind.
How will the final designs be selected? Will there be one winner per se, or?
I think there'll be a synergism, a combination of designs from the many, many students and faculty that will work on them. And the faculty will make presentations, as they do here at the school, and then from those they will select, and we'll bring a team up to help them think it through, and then we'll eventually take the final design back to the executive committee of the games for approval.
I see. You'll have the, how many designs to select from? You're going to narrow it down to?
That's unknown. I just talked in there about what kind of things can come out of 250 minds, all directed toward the common goal.
How much help are you getting from the Los Angeles committee?
Well, they've been very helpful, but they disbanded almost immediately after the games. And we have talked with them one-on-one to find out those things they did that they thought were successful, those things they did that quietly they would not have done again. And in the design world, of course, they're in a much different situation than we were, because they have a different city background in Los Angeles to Indianapolis. So we can't translate and wouldn't want to translate their designs to Indianapolis, but they've been helpful in having us think through.
The enthusiasm and support for this project at the Ball State College of Architecture was very noticeable today when you spoke to the students and faculty. Does this hold true for the whole project and the groups that you've contacted
Oh, yes.
for support?
I think of these as the giving games. We have more volunteers, more corporate contributions of time, effort, resources, and money than we could ever have imagined. And it is truly a community volunteer effort, and one that people are undertaking not out of obligation, but with excitement. They're enthused about it.